Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Nickell Mello to the show. She is the owner of Oasis Senior Advisors in the greater San Jose area, where she provides compassionate, free, personalized guidance to families navigating senior living options. After a successful 35-year career in the tech industry, specializing in partner marketing roles at companies like Cisco, Juniper, and Plantronics, Nickell felt called to make a more meaningful impact. She transitioned from corporate life to business ownership, channeling her strategic relationship building skills into helping seniors and their families find the right care solutions. Nickell, thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Seb. And I'm so glad to be here and that we found each other. So, yeah, I mean, it says a little bit that I've been doing tech for 35 years and I did a transition. And it really came about, I would say post COVID, but it's always been in my heart to just really be with seniors. I love working with just the seniors, just in general, hearing their stories, understanding more about their history. And I find anywhere I travel, I'm gravitating towards history just to learn more. So I do really love hearing their stories. And my mom's actually, it's probably an inspiration for my mom. So she's a business owner, so entrepreneurship. So that's one of the reasons why this was part of my calling, is to go into business ownership in a way like with franchise ownership, that I could really just dedicate what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it to help the senior community. And so my mom is actually a salon owner. She's been a salon owner now for 62 years, and she's 84 years old, and she's still working full time. Well, I wouldn't say full time, but she still owns her own business. So she was definitely an inspiration for me. But one of the really compelling memories for me, well, there's two, but the first is that when at a very young age, I was a receptionist in her salon and answering the phone and talking to clients and doing what I could where it didn't require like a license, if I was washing their hands or helping my mom with the towels or things like that, cleaning the salon all the time, but always talking with her clientele. And many of them over the years have always been the senior clientele. And out of that, I actually took a volunteer job about a block away because I really got tired of being at my mom's salon after work every day because we lived in the country. So I always, every day I had to go to her salon, and I just wanted to change it up a little bit. So I started going to the senior nursing home, which was about a block away. And I did that. I started doing it at like 12 or 13 years old. And at 14, they offered me a activity director role. And of course it was exciting for me because I'm playing bingo and talking with all of the clientele, the residents, and painting their nails, all the fun stuff that I really love to do. But it was great for the company because they didn't have to pay me either. So really good both ways. But I didn't even know what an activities director was at that time. And so that's just always been in my heart. And I probably should have followed healthcare after that, but I didn't. I moved from Idaho to California and got involved in tech right away. And actually, Cisco and Juniper were the ones that helped me pay for my college. So I ended up getting my degree much later in my 30s after I had my two kids. But I've just always had this calling to go back to working with seniors. And so that's what I'm doing now. And I'm so happy to be here.
So you grew up in Idaho?
I did. Hmm.
And so like you lived out like in the country and your mom's shop was in Boise or Nampa or Caldwell or someplace like that?
Not any of those towns, a little tiny, tiny town, about 15,000. And she still lives there today. She's the youngest of 14 children. And she
Wow.
took care of her parents, well, her father. Her mom died when I was really little. So it's just always been in the genes. But yeah, she stayed there really she was the only one that stayed behind in Idaho. Most of them are in that little town. Most of them went to bigger pastures and bigger cities, and a lot in California.
So as a 12-year-old girl, you just went to a nursing home or down the block from your mom's nail salon and just walked in the door and just offered to help the ladies there with their nails and stuff like that, or what was
I
behind
just
that?
said, kind of like a candy striper. at the hospital. So they have those, at least in our little hometown. We had volunteers for the nursing homes. We had about two or three. And so they were so excited because every day they just wanted consistency. They wanted to be sure that if they're going to put the time in, meaning the administration, that we would show up. And so there were a few of us that showed up, and it wasn't even for service hours. It was really just something to do in a little town that didn't have a lot to offer for children and teenagers. So yeah, it was, yeah, she's a hair salon owner, but she did nails as well. So that I just did what I could. Like if I knew that I could paint nails and not get in trouble, or if I could comb their hair or put on a little makeup or do activities and play bingo with them or sing songs. And I even would take in my Shetland sheepdog. We'd have pet day and we'd take in our dogs. So just fun stuff that I remember.
So you went in there at 12 years old, which to me is kind of mind-blowing that a 12-year-old would be so generous to volunteer a significant amount of time like that. That's pretty amazing to me, because when I was 12, I certainly wouldn't have been doing that. But at 14, they made you the activities director. That was your
Yes.
actual, like, do you have business cards in office, or what
I
was that
wished
like?
I had business cards. I didn't think it was a big deal at that time. I even asked my mom, I'm like, I said, they just gave me an activities director's role. And she's like, are you kidding? And she goes, what does that mean? Do you get paid? And I go, I can't get paid. But, you know, it was the title. It was
It
the
was a
title.
title.
It
Titles
was
are
the
important.
title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
how,
guess it was important, but I didn't really know what that really meant other than that's what they gave me.
right. So how many years did you volunteer there at that senior home?
I think I did it like two more years and then I started actually working. That led me to a role when I finally was 15 and a half or 16, working for a lady that worked. She also owned her own business, but she was a wig owner and a Merrill Norman makeup artist. I think they still have Merrill Norman, and a clothing store owner. And so she would go there and do makeup at the nursing center as well. And then she offered me a job to come and work at her salon. Or it wasn't her salon, it was her store. So then that's when I transitioned.
Okay. So I imagine that if you spent, I mean, just several years at least working in that nursing home, that you must have really learned a lot from the folks who live there. Can you remember anything that you like took away from your interactions with these people at such a young and formative period in your life?
Well, I remember four people in particular. And one, her name's Flora Farmer. Sweetest lady, really sweet. And her family would not come and visit her. And I don't know, I get teary-eyed about this, but such a sweet, sweet lady. And I didn't understand why she was in there because her family lived far away. And I guess that was probably the safest place for her to be. And she was not negative about it at all. She was very happy to be there, but I just didn't understand um, how her family could do that, right? Because she was just so fun to talk to and had so many stories to share, and always remembered who I was when I would go and visit her. There was another lady who worked for Mountain Bell, so that was like Pac Bell time that we
Yep.
had here on the West Coast
Sure.
before AT&T, and she was she answered the phone. So with the switchboard, like with the clicking in and out. And so she had that history. But now I understand it. At that time, I didn't understand something was going on with her. And she was doing a lot of what Alzheimer's and dementia patients do. They weren't able to figure out what she had at that time. There was a need, it was just that she was getting older. That was it. But she definitely did have Alzheimer's. So I remember her and two others that they had some form of dementia as well. And I just remember we didn't label it. We didn't understand what it was. We just knew that, like one would get really upset and agitated, and then the next minute really happy. So I never really knew when I could go in, and the other people, they were named Mary and Joe. So I remember all four of their names, which I think is interesting. But
Yeah,
there
that
were
is
others, but
interesting.
those four stand out to me.
Yeah, so that's pretty heavy for like a 12 to like whatever 15 and a half year old to experience. Did it seem heavy at the time, or did it just like, oh, these are just
No,
no.
it didn't seem heavy at all. I think because I had I think my step grandma must have had some dementia, and she lived in that our little town, and she was just always crabby and grouchy. And but I could catch her on a good day where we could have cold sweet tea together.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know, I just didn't think it was heavy. I just thought it was interesting. I
Yeah.
thought, really, how are they going to be today, and what's the stories I'm going to hear? And I don't know, I just found it really interesting to just learn more about them.
Yeah, so back in the day, in a little town, a small town in Idaho, there wasn't memory care. There wasn't like no memory care option. It was
No,
just
it was the
assisted living,
true scary nursing home.
and
When
that
people today, like many seniors, they're like, I don't want to go to the nursing home. And so we're educating them on the differences and really what that means. And it's just not the same as it was the nursing home back then. It's just not the same.
okay. Well, actually, so let's put a pin in that. I mean, I want to come back to that. But before I we talk about that, can you tell me about your decision to move to California and so what year was that you moved out here and you went to for work at Juniper Networks or Cisco right away, or how was that?
Um, well, if I give the year, then you're going to know how old I am.
It's okay. Everyone's old. We're all old. Actually, we like being
So,
old. Old is
well, in the
old is
80s, so the late 80s,
uh-huh.
and I moved out here because I had an aunt and uncle that lived out here. One of the 14, um, my mom's sister lived out here, and her husband was actually an engineer for Lockheed, and he worked up in San Felipe, which at that time was just a really scary mountain road
Uh-huh.
that he would drive to every day to and from. I'm like, how do you do that every day? It's like really it's driving like 17, but to a non-California mountain driver person, that was really scary. And so I moved out here, and I started working at Oak Ridge. So I was in more retail when I first moved out here because I didn't
Oak Ridge
have
Mall.
really Oak Ridge Mall. Yeah, I didn't have college career goals. It was more just raised by two entrepreneurs. And we had like a lot of teachers in our family, but not really close to be able to educate on and counsel on, you need to go to college and here's why. So my mom said, hey, if you, and my dad supported it too. They said, if you want to move to California, it's better than living in a small town. My dad was worried that there was a lot of drugs. So there's a misnomer of living in a small town. Sometimes you think that, wow, a small town, it's just so picturesque and seems like really friendly and everyone's waving to each other, in small town Idaho. But behind the scenes, if they don't have enough to do for the teenagers, they can get involved in a lot of drugs. And there were a lot of drugs. It was scary. It was very scary. And, I did experimenting at that time a little with pot, but I was so scared of cocaine, which was very prevalent around my hometown. So my dad was just glad that I really wanted to get out and do something different. So when I moved here and lived with my aunt and uncle, then I think I lived there with them for a year, and then I actually found a roommate on this newspaper. It was called the Potpourri when we would have the newspaper,
Uh-huh.
and it was classifieds paper. I don't know if you remember that,
No,
the
I don't.
Potpourri. And I found a roommate in there, and she wanted me to take care of her Bichon Frichet, like her dog, while she traveled. And she was an engineer for Pac Bell. And I was 19 years old. She was 30. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's so old. That's what She's so old. But she was a female engineer for Pac Bell, and she would travel all around the world, and she just wanted someone to walk her dog and be there with her with her dog. So it was $300 a month that I would pay each month, and I had my own private bedroom and bathroom and washer and dryer, and my parents were so glad that I found someone to live with, and that's where I got into tech. Like she'd really introduced me to a lot of just female support and female not even entrepreneurship, but just really support from a female perspective, and that you can do this and you can go to school and all these things. So she really gave me very good sound advice. And I started my first job as a receptionist, and I was a contractor, and then I became permanent after a year. And then I stayed there. The Comag does, or it's a company that doesn't exist anymore, but that's actually how I met my husband, was through that company.
Oh,
We were all around the same age, like the groups that we hung around. They had some really cool employee offerings. You could, the company would pay 80% for activities, and then we would pick up 20% to go do activities. So we went to Bodega Bay, we went to Reno, we went to Vegas, all these fun, like cultural activities to support the employees. And I've never been at a company like that again, to that depth, where there was so much company and employee enjoyment. To We were just friends, and we're still good friends today with many of our friends from that company.
oh wow.
And Western Digital purchased them. So now, or they're a much bigger company. But that's where I learned about tech. And then I went to Cisco after that, and Juniper, and then the latest was Plantronics.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
I
And
got into
so
tech.
Plantronics got bought out by Poly, I guess, and I don't even know where Plantronics is anymore. I mean, their office now belongs to Joby Aviation, which is very exciting, right? The Robo Air Taxi, built
Oh,
in Santa
okay.
Cruz,
Are you there in Santa
California.
Cruz? Are you in
Yeah,
Santa
yeah.
Cruz?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I was there during that transition. Plantronics actually purchased Polycom, believe it or not.
Oh, I thought
And
Polycom
then,
purchased Plantronics.
no, you'd think so, right? But Plantronics had the funding, and they
Oh.
didn't own anything on that building. And so they purchased Polycom and then became Poly. And then HP actually purchased them. So now
Oh,
they're
really?
HP. Hmm.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just bought a Poly headset like 2 days ago because my old one, the microphone stopped working, and it's a darn fine headset. So I'm very happy with it. Um, so what did you actually do in tech? Were you like an engineer, or were you marketing, sales, or HR, or what was your role in tech?
I was from Cisco early on, 27, 28. I think I started at Cisco when I was 28. And I just fell into a channels role. And channels was really working with partners and resellers, how to help them sell our products. And that just really was my love. We didn't even call it partner marketing. Now we call it more partner marketing. There are some companies that still call it channels, but it's really how you market, the channels in which you market. And so at that time, we would have two-tier resellers, and then we'd sell direct, and we'd also sell through distribution, and then they would resell that product. So it was, the roles that I was in was really teaching our resellers how to sell.
Okay, interesting. So you did that for 35 years, and then COVID came, and so you were still doing that like in March of 2020 when COVID, like the lockdown happened, or had you transitioned already by then?
I was, yeah. At that time, I was still at Poly at that time.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Hmm.
So what happened that made you say, time for me to move on? What was the impetus for that?
Um, I think that just the corporate California, Silicon Valley, maybe the churn. Cisco, I was very used to every August we'd have layoffs, and Cisco is very similar to my original company, Comag, where there was I just really had so much love for Cisco, and really just felt like that was so foundational to my growth, and really and the company's just in tech, that we would all kind of gravitate around to kind of the same companies. We would rotate around a little bit. And I think I just got tired of the churn of going into the office, dealing with the traffic. We still had, at that time, we had to be in the office. Cisco was one of the one companies where you could work from home. And so I knew if I were to go to another company, so being at Poly, I was over in Santa Cruz probably, and I live in San Jose, so I was over the hill probably 3 or 4 days a week. And I don't know. I just wanted something different. I wanted something more aligned to my mission and my passion of giving back. And I just found that each company that I was at, I really wanted to do more volunteer work. And so they, especially Cisco and Poly, they would really want you to volunteer because that just was part of their mission and how we would give back and build culture and support each other. And I just found that I wanted to do that more. And so I still have a love for volunteering, like being part of the Alzheimer's Association and being really in depth and being able to kind of manage my own day-to-day in business if I want to do. There's events that I'm doing right now, and every event I do, I'm giving back to Alzheimer's Association and being able to market that and really support Alzheimer's Association. So I just found that more and more I just wanted to be able to do that and kind of drive my own mission, but really be under an umbrella that felt like corporate, which being part of Oasis does feel comfortable because it's a established company that is very supportive of their franchise owners. And then it allows us to really create our own business model to support the communities in the way that we want to market.
Okay, so you're working at Poly, you're driving over the hill, which for those of you who may not know, which probably no one does really, like between Santa Cruz on the beach roughly and Silicon Valley, there's a mountain range, the Santa Cruz Mountains, and we call it the Hill. And it's kind of a, I mean, a lot of people are scared to drive it. I like driving it, but a lot of people don't like driving it and the traffic can be horrible, and it is in fact somewhat dangerous. So I could see why you wouldn't be looking forward to that. After 35 years of doing that, you all of a sudden, or maybe it wasn't all of a sudden, maybe it was a gradual thing, you decided, I'm going to return to my personal mission. So how did you decide on like becoming like a Oasis franchise owner and getting into your current line of work? Did you consider others too, or did it just seem like it from the get-go?
Well, I didn't know that this role, like placement role, was available. I didn't even know it existed. And my husband, there were I took on some contractor roles after I left Poly, and I'm like, I don't know, this just is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like what I'm wanting. And so I really had to look within and do a lot of soul searching, and I hired like a life coach to really help me understand more about myself and get back to what is it that you want to do? Right? And what are you good at? And what do you like? And what don't you want to do? And so my life coach really helped me just to discover more about myself. And then my husband said, just quit your job and take a year off and go figure it out, because he was tired of hearing me talk about it. Like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. Could I do this or could I do that? And he's like, take a year off and go figure it out. So I did, and I knew that I wanted to work with seniors. That was the major thing that I knew I wanted to do. And so I was going to go into senior concierge. And then the more research I did, I found something about someone that's like Oasis. It's a franchise company. And so I went down that path. I didn't even think of franchise at all. When I think of franchise, I think of McDonald's or Pizza Hut.
Right.
I just, I didn't really think about it in this realm. And so then when I just started, and of course we didn't have ChatGPT at that time. So you couldn't put anything in and go, is there anything out there that looks like this? This is what I love to do, right?
Right.
Nothing was like that. So I really had to go on self-discovery and internet searches and see if something would pop up. And so it did, and then I found a broker. So I found a franchise broker of all industries, and it was really easy for him because he's like, you know exactly what you want to do. Like, you don't even have to have me search for anything. And he goes, it's a placement. You want to do placement is what you want to do. That's very similar to concierge. And I said, okay. So let's take a look at it. And so then I had to tell my husband, I go, okay, either I do concierge work, which I knew in my heart that I would have to build my brand, market. I'd have to spend a lot of money doing that, building that. I'd never been a solo business owner in that way. And or I could go into a franchise where it is very similar to corporate, where you have marketing, like the website that you talked about, that it's really well done and consistent. Those things are offered as being part of a franchise. But there's significant costs to get into that. And not as significant, though, as McDonald's or Pizza Hut, those. But still, I mean, you have to really think about what you're going to do. And we are homeowners. We've been homeowners in the Bay Area in the same house for 28 years. So if that tells you some equity that we have in our house. So I said to my husband, either I could do this, concierge, or go into placement, which is very similar, but one's part of a franchise. And he goes, do the franchise. I go, okay, well, this is the cost. And he goes, do the franchise. So I said, okay.
What a great husband.
Yeah.
Take a year off. Yeah, take out a HELOC. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very supportive. That's awesome. But what is a senior concierge? What exactly is that?
So a senior concierge, very similar to placement, but I'm working with a referral network in both roles. So as a senior concierge, you're working with a trusted referral network. So when you're meeting with a family, you're pulling that referral network together based on the needs of that family. So if they wanted to sell their house, I would say, oh, call Seb, because Seb actually works in the Santa Cruz area and he knows the Santa Cruz Mountains really well. And he would be really good at A, B, and C, and he also works very closely with seniors. So, I would kind of take that in and understanding who does what really well to match them with the clients, with the family that I'm helping support. And it could be elder law attorney, it could be movers, it could be organizing companies. And so pulling all those resources together to help support that family. And then in addition, it could be me just going to be a companion to a senior. And I do that many times in my role as a placement owner. So that's why I see that there's so many similarities between the two. It's just one was like my own business, doing it by myself because I didn't know that there was a placement part at that time, or going into this company, which allows me to expand on how I do my placement. And Oasis is all about concierge, boutique, being like the trusted advisor for that family to help them understand how to make the best decision for that couple or the family. I have a couple that actually live in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and they were wanting to move into assisted living. They've never lived outside that home. It's a big property. And they're fully capable of doing something different than living in assisted living right now. So I'm like, you need more independent living, but you need a garage and you need a workbench area, right? He still wants to do all the tinkering and stuff and doing a lot of carpentry. So anyway, we're working together on how to find them the best place that's not assisted living right now. It may be later, but that's part of what I bring to the table, is providing that. That's the concierge work that I do.
So that's very interesting. So, because I think that a lot of placement people, they don't do any of that. So, I mean, so far as I can tell, they are mostly just placement people, right? Like you call a place for mom, right? You get someone from a place for mom. They're not doing any of that, right? I mean, and a lot of placement people work with a place for mom.
Yeah. There's a
So,
lot of people that won't work for a place for mom. And it just depends, we have a few companies out here that were part of the same organization, and even though we have the same role and we're competitors, we see each other as our support network, and our goals are to help families.
right. Well, it's kind of like being a realtor, right? I mean, like it's a cooperative thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like the whole thing is cooperative. Like, yes, it's kind of competitive, but really the big competition is internally yourself getting up and
Yeah.
like, you know, doing it every day, performing at a high level. That's, to me, that's my serious competition. It's myself. It's not anybody else. So, so do you work mostly with the family? Like, who contacts you first? Because you just said these people in the Santa Cruz Mountains, they are themselves say, we need to downsize. They contacted you. So is that like most of it, or is it most of it like the family, the adult children call you up and say, hey, my parents need help? How does that break down?
It's both. In Silicon Valley, I find that um, we have a higher degree of professionals that are seniors that, if they can, they're taking charge of their own life and they don't want their kids to do anything. And they're extremely independent. Even though they may be feeling like they're going through some memory loss, they're trying to do something sooner than later. So I would say it's 50-50. And when I am involved with the adult children, unless the mom or the dad is going through dementia, like heavy case, strong, high Alzheimer's, they also want to be very involved. So it's really just, and you probably experienced this too. It's really the dynamic of the family and the dynamics of who you're working with is so individualized between everyone you work with.
Yeah.
So I would say it's half and half.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I mean, I say I am a realtor. I sell houses, but really my business is people. That
Yeah.
that really is it. So, does this ever happen? Like I find that a lot of children, adult children that grew up in the Bay Area, no longer live in the Bay Area because it's just so unaffordable here, and they've moved out, oftentimes very, very far away, and it's difficult for them to come and help out in person. Do you, like, as a senior concierge, like, do you just go out there and just like take charge of like, you assess the situation, assess their condition, assess their needs, and like coordinate everything that they're going to need to have done in order to make a transition? Is that part of what you do?
I do. Yeah. So if sometimes the adult children, if they're in another state and their parents live here, uh, it's sometimes they're not comfortable in the beginning, like a stranger going in their home,
Yeah.
or if the parents are struggling with some form of dementia, they won't let you in the home. So there's protocols that we follow, based on the family dynamics in the situation to make sure that we can, one, if they're in that situation, that we can get into the house to make sure that they're okay, like whether we file something with APS or have someone go up there that's part of like assisted living community, that we can do an assessment together. But it's really, I mean, one thing that I didn't mention earlier is my mom, even though she's healthy, she got really, really sick on Christmas Day. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. And it was right before I went into this business. But her neighbors called me just out of the blue because she lives in the country and she's very private. She didn't want anyone to know. She didn't even know anything was going on, really. Her phone was off the hook and I couldn't reach her, but the neighbors said, something's going on weird with your mom. Her car hadn't moved in 4 days. And that's very rare for her because she's still very active. And so they said, can we break into her home? And I said, yes, please do. And they found her on the floor in her home. I think she'd been there a day because I had talked to her the day before, but she contracted a UTI, and so she was delirious. And I didn't know enough about the UTI, what that causes, that it starts in the brain, but then the infection works its way
Yeah.
through the body. And you become delirious after very quick time. And it happens to males and females. And so I think about that when I'm working with adult children who live in another state or family members that are very concerned about someone that lives here. And I just take that same approach that, make sure that your neighbors, that you share things with your neighbors because you can't just rely on yourself. And I kind of get mad at my mom, like she's not really good at her phone and her cell, for some reason, I don't know if you can stop this for just a sec, Seb. I thought that my battery is running low and I have it plugged in. So is there a way you can stop for a minute?
Yeah, so
Sorry
I'll just
about
edit
that.
that. I'll edit it out.
Okay, give me just a second. I don't
Sure.
know why it's not working. I have to be in my spare bedroom today because we have painters in the house.
Oh,
And I thought they were going to be done. So normally I would be downstairs, but I'm up here today. So sorry about that.
no problem.
So my plug must have just come out of the wall. All right, so it's charging now. So I
So
didn't think I was going to have to tell you that I'm makeshifting today.
you're on your phone, huh? This is your phone?
No, I'm on my laptop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. It just must have got unplugged. I didn't realize that. Okay. So,
So
all
you're
right, I'm
saying your
back.
mom is not good with your phone. You said, yeah, you were saying your mom is not
She's
good with your phone.
she's not good with her phone. She has her house phone. It's still rotary.
Wow.
And she does have one of those big phones also, that's in the other room. But she had she's gone through a couple different phones and now she has an Apple phone. But her fingers are so brittle. And because she's been working with color and ammonia and all kinds of things on her fingers for now 62 plus years, that the pads on her fingers don't work with an Apple phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So those are things, and typically, anyone above 60, they do like to have flip phone. I still hear about the flip phone a lot, about being able to have an actual where you can punch in the number and not have it
Yes.
be like a transparent dial pad. So anyway, those phones were off the hook. The house phones were off the hook. We couldn't reach her. And so the neighbors did break into her home and that's what they found. But I still have to get on my mom because she doesn't like to talk to anyone about what's going on. She's always very positive and I'm fine, everything's good, I'm great. That's her personality with everyone. And I'm like, Mom, we got to have like a list. And I'm an only child. So it makes me really nervous that I don't have someone there. I do have a couple people, but she's just so private, she won't share anything with them. And that's very similar to how the silent generation, they're very much like that, very private. And I think the generations just understanding more about the generations that we all go through. Like now it's the baby boomers and what's happening with the baby boomers. And, it's 11,400 every day are turning 65 just in America alone. And understanding more about the generation and what they went through and thinking about the depression before that, I just think is so interesting because it really tells us a lot about the people that we're working with. Even our generation and our younger generation. I have two kids. We live in a household of four generations, four different generation types. So
Wow.
my husband's a baby boomer. We have Gen X, we have Gen Z, and a millennial.
Wow.
And
Incredible. Yeah.
very different, all four of us.
Well, times are changing fast, right? So everyone's experience is getting a lot different from generation to generation. I mean, I think that for thousands of years it was mostly the same, right? And like
Yeah.
the kinds of change that we've seen in the last 100 years, it's like it's a rocket. So, so you became a senior concierge and a placement specialist. So, I was talking to Scott Fisher, and he was saying like in Phoenix, there's 2,000 different like senior living communities essentially, and I don't know how many there are in the Bay Area, but there must be a lot. How do you get to know all these places, and how do you decide, or how can anyone decide? I guess they can use your help, but like where to go? Like how do you know? Like how do you match a client with a community?
So, something unique about Oasis Senior Advisors, and it's one of the reasons that I went with them, is we have our own CRM. And so we have a matchmaker system. And so we put the data in. It's not quite as robust as Salesforce, right? It would be great if something was in there for healthcare, for Salesforce. down the road, or other types of CRMs, but it does do a match. So if we, and the way that it operates is once we put in the data about the client that we're working with, and the location and the budget and the types of activities of daily living that they need, then it will populate a list for us. And so that's, but I think, once you start knowing like your area, like South Bay, I know really well because and then with roundtables, right? So I see a lot of my teammates at the senior roundtables, and they're doing, they're wanting like people to come to their communities all the time. So they want you to be able to go look, feel, understand more about their culture. And so they're doing that. Plus we have the CRM, we have the roundtable. And then part of our requirement is we have to go out, Oasis Placement Advisors, we go out and visit every single community and rate and do a entire intake process on the community. So we understand, like how many memory care they have, how many assisted living, if they have independent, how many are actually there that are independent even though they live in assisted, how big their community is, when they just started, when they opened, where do they go for their activities? Do they ever go to the city? Do they ever go to the beach? What do they do when they go to the beach, right? Those things, and then that helps me understand when I'm working with a client or family members. And when I am working with the family members, it's really interesting that the adult children, they will kind of look at the aesthetics for their parents, and they want to do these things, they want to do this, they want to do that. But really, most of the time, like the senior loved ones that I'm working with, they just want to be able to have someone to communicate with and have like a nice dinner with, have a meal with, be able to go on a walk out out in the garden. So that's interesting too, like tempering like the adult children with the true needs of what their parent really wants.
Yeah, so like you have like Allure in Santa Clara County, which is amazing, but then you have like Atria Willow Glen, right, which is like way more downscale than Allure, but like has a really great community feel to it, right? I mean, like there are beautiful gardens, and everyone is super nice. It's not as anywhere near as luxurious, like it doesn't look that amazing, but it does have a really beautiful community feel to it. So how do you know though, like as a person, not you as a professional, but like as a senior, an older adult, or an adult child, how do you know like what kind of place the parent should go? Because there's like independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing facility. Like how can people know like what they actually need?
Well, sometimes they're not buzzwords that they'll hear, but the kids or the parents could be talking with someone and they're like, "Oh, you need assisted living." Or you need memory care because you have dementia, or you have Alzheimer's, so you have to go into memory care. And it's really like with anything assisted living, we only have a couple independent care communities here, but they're attached to assisted living and memory care. And one of them you just mentioned, Atria Willow Glen, is one of them. That the reason that they can have it that way is they have separation of, they have an independent building, they have an assisted building, they have a memory care building. But anything assisted, you have to do a 602, which is a physician's form, only here in California that we ask for that because we want to be different than any other state. But I mean, they probably have other types of forms, other estates, but it actually is really valuable because it does give a good baseline, and it gives a good baseline for the community to start out with. And when I say community, I'm talking about like Atria, where I could have someone move into independent, like when I work with Felicia at Atria, and she's like, well, I mean, if you're on the cusp and you think that they could be independent, but they might need some help, you could move them into independent and they could get in-home care. So we might bring in-home care for like 3 hours or something, like a week, where maybe they just want like a shower once a week, but they don't want to pay for anything else. And all of, like the Brookdale is the other one that's like that has independent as well in our area. And It's a little bit less expensive to move into independent and then bring your own in-home care in. But assisted living, if they're licensed, which all of ours here have to be licensed, and they provide the care, which is more expensive. And so sometimes we might start out as independent where we can with those two communities. And then we'll say, you know what, we actually need to move them up to assisted, where then we require the 602 for assisted and memory care. And that's how we do it. Many times we might know they may be on the cusp of assisted living or memory care. And just because you're diagnosed with dementia doesn't mean you have to move into memory care. The only reason that they would have to move into memory care is if they're exit seeking or they're eloping or they're agitated and could hurt someone else or the care staff. Then we have to move them into memory care. So it's part of like the whole assessment. So I typically, when I'm meeting the family and the parents, I'm doing my own assessment to decide. And then the next level is then the community does their assessment. And then we get it from the doctor. And then we make the final decision based on what the family really wants.
So does the community have doctors that they work with to do the assessments? Do they take care of that, or do you help people take care of that?
It can be either. Like, there's a couple senior or concierge doctors that I work with, and they can do it over Zoom. They can go face to face if they're local. You mentioned it earlier, the kids live in one place, the parents might live here, or sometimes it's vice versa. I have a lot of parents that live out of state, but they want to move here to be with the kids. And so we have a concierge doctor. With the concierge doctor, one of the values that with Oasis, because we're nationwide, there's 140 of us nationwide. And so if I have the parents living in another state, and if there's an owner that happens to be in that same city, in the same state that where the parents happen to be, then I can call my colleague and say, hey, would you mind going over to Sally's house and do a Zoom with her and have, senior docs on the call and do it that way, because we don't want to ask the seniors in many cases to be able to do a Zoom,
Right.
and it can't just be a phone call. It has to be a Zoom.
Right.
So it just really depends on the family dynamics, the location, the situation. But we know if they're assisted and above, we have to have either a concierge doctor there or here. And if it's Kaiser, we know we have to give more time to get things done. And so sometimes I say you might just want to do a concierge doctor even though they're here, and which is going to be out of pocket. But, Medicare, if they're Advantage, they can get some cost covered. So just understanding more about those things, but it takes experience to be able to know that and answer those questions. And I'm still learning every single day. So I'm just, I always try to just be open to learning every day.
Well, education is a journey, not a destination, right? So
Right.
I'm learning every day too. But what are some of the biggest fears that people have about moving into an assisted living community?
That it's like a nursing home, that it's like a hospital feel. And many times I equate it, when I think about seniors, depending on their personality, that I will, even if they're in assisted or memory care, we can still bring in-home care for companionship only. They can't take vitals, they can't, do any of the bathing or anything like that, because then the community is liable for that. But we can bring in companions. And I just think about, when we were on the school ground for the first time, or going to a lunchroom the first day and say we moved to a new school, or going to college, I kind of equate it with my own kids, that being on that college campus for the very first time and having to go to a lunchroom or a dining hall, and how scary and overwhelming that is. So I just say, hey, why don't we bring in a companion, and the companion can help get kind of the care organized in terms of, okay, it's lunchtime right now, let's go ahead and go down together. And then the companion would be the one that was introducing the new person to everyone else and sitting there and just having general conversation. So having someone to be there with them and the companion just really getting them comfortable with their space. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just moving into somewhere new. And really, if you think about it, like, it's scary for anyone, right? I
Yeah,
mean, if you're not
change is
that type
scary.
of person, but you're giving up your house, your belongings, you're downsizing, you may have lost a spouse. There's so much transition going on with the senior. And so it's just really meeting them where they're at to provide them the support that they need so they can be successful.
Yeah, so you said that their biggest fear is that is like a nursing home, and I keep hearing that it's more like a cruise ship on land. So, I mean, is it really closer to a nursing home or closer to a cruise ship? I mean, or is it none of those?
Their fear is that it's like a nursing home, an old fashioned nursing home, that it's not like that. It's not like the hospital clinical feel. It really is like it does feel like that because it feels like they're on a cruise ship. Because they get 3 meals a day. You know, they have parties. They can dress up for parties. They have 30 or 40 activities they can do. They're going on field trips. So it really is, it does equate to a cruise ship. And some, if they're newer, they're still kind of like, if the communities are newer, they're still really building upon what works for that culture at that community based on the people that live there.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I've been to 6 or 10 or whatever of these communities, and I sense a real dedication on the part of the staff to actually make sure that the people who live there are not only happy and well fed and taken care of, but also happy, right? That they care about their emotional uh, you know well being. But what are some of the problems that people experience? Like even in the best communities, I would imagine, like even in Allure or whatever, right? I imagine that there are some common complaints that people have about living in a community like that. And so, what do you hear, and what are some of the solutions to some of these complaints that people might have?
yeah, I think I the older we get, the less active in many cases we are. And so one of the things I really talk about is try to keep yourself active as much as you can. So if you're in a walker today, try to really do the physical therapy and the occupational therapy, and so you can remain strong. Once you lose your mobility, that gets frustrating for the person that's living there. So the most you can do for yourself is keep active. And it reduces your circle. When you're not active, you have to rely on other people, and that gets really frustrating. And so it's a strain on not only yourself, but your family, and then also the caretakers, depending on the attitude or the disposition of the senior, when they lose less and less independence. So that's one thing. The other is there tends to be, it doesn't matter how old we get, we all kind of all stick with like people we know, like, and trust. And when you're moving into a community, there still are little groups that will stick together and form their little groups. So
Cliques. There's cliques in the
cliques.
communities, huh?
Yep, making sure that the caretakers can see that the cliques are forming and how to help people integrate to be supported, because that's your home. Like, you're not really going outside and breaking it up as much and being able to go have dinner with all your friends. If you're still able to be mobile, you can still do that, but the less mobility you have, you tend to stay there at the community more and more, and that's really your family. That becomes your family. So that would be the second, is there are cliques. And one of the biggest things that I'm seeing now is integrating tech into supporting the needs of the seniors, and especially when and tech is I probably recognize the tech piece the most for me, because I come from tech. So it's probably something that I gravitate to, where if we had tech in place more in the rooms, it could allow the kids living anywhere, kind of like a nanny cam or something like that, where, and it doesn't even have to be a camera. It could be something that just helps the kids monitor or understand, are they getting what they paid for? So is the care meeting the needs based on, and is it matching what they're paying for? And being able to leverage technology to support that. So recognizing, that we're paying for the caretakers to bathe, my mom or dad like 3 or 4 times a week. How can we validate that? Are we validating that based on paper? Or are we validating that based on a tech that's in the room that the kids also have access to?
Right. So it's interesting you mentioned the clicks and what an issue that can be, because I know that one key component of anyone's health, regardless of your age, is socialization, right? People who are around other people and have those strong support networks, they generally speaking are happier, healthier, live longer lives. And that one other thing that I've heard is that a lot of times people because maybe their spouse died and maybe a lot of their friends have died and they don't really have that many people left in their lives, and that loneliness is a big issue. And I think that to me, I think is one of the concerns that a lot of people have, is that, okay, even I'm moving somewhere else where even the few people I know aren't around. And then you mentioned at the beginning of our talk here today, that little old lady who was really super nice and that nobody ever came and saw her. And is that still, I imagine that's a big problem today. And so what can families do? Because maybe the parents are here in the Bay Area and the family's in Massachusetts, right? So how do we make sure that those people are still getting the love and support and the community that they need, even when they're 3,000 miles away?
Yeah. It's less loneliness, and that's one of the major causes with seniors is loneliness and depression. And many times the kids don't get it or see it because mom and dad, they're like the anchor of our family. What do you mean they're lonely and depressed? They're not recognizing the symptoms of what's going on. And so that's one of the major reasons to move them into a community so they can socialize and not be as lonely. But that's one of the things that the caretakers really encourage, is for the resident to come down and have meals. And it takes the care team also to recognize the signs, even though they may be coming down to have meals, when they're feeling isolated or when they're not wanting to socialize, and why. And then making sure that they're letting the kids know, or someone know, that, this person needs a little bit of help here because we're recognizing these signs. So I think it's a two-way street to understand when someone is just isolating themselves or they're going through depression, and why they're going through depression, to really make sure you understand it. Yeah, I have a client right now who I've been working with her for quite some time, and she really does want to move into a community, but her kids don't recognize that she needs that, even though she's saying that she does. And what do you do there? It's like she really wants to rely on the kids' feedback, and so she's not making a shift, but meanwhile she's leading towards major depression and isolation. So, it's really working with her and making sure that she feels comfortable, that she can make decisions on her own, that it's really, it is, at the end of the day, it is her money. It's not her kids' money. So a lot of those things you have to really work through. But that's part of why I love what I'm doing, because I do feel like I can sense those things, and when I'm talking, just the words, and if they're reaching out and why they're reaching out, and they're reaching out for different reasons, that let's figure out how we can help you with this.
Yeah. So, say, this isn't your father's Oldsmobile. Today's tenior living community, is it really a lot different from the one that you experienced as a young girl out in Idaho? Because I think a lot of people maybe have that same impression, right? They think it's an institutional thing. Have we really come a long way when it comes to caring for older adults in communities like these?
I think we've come a long way. What we had growing up was the term skilled nurse, or the term nursing home, but it really is skilled nursing. And skilled nursing is higher acuity of care. What they've done in the last 20 to 30 years is really separate that out, because and also, seeing the need for people just want to be, like if you think about like the CCRCs, the continuum of care, where they want to be able to move into a Gulf community, a like-minded little town almost, where they can all do things together. But it's definitely different. It's because now we have things that are called assisted living and memory care and independent care. But there still is a need for skilled nursing, which is very similar to nursing home. When someone breaks their hip and they're not able to go home, but they need nursing staff to be, and doctors to be able to be there to support them. So there still are those things, but we use it in a very different way today. It's more short-term care for higher nursing needs.
Okay. So I would feel remiss if I didn't ask this question, is that, I mean, these places are not cheap, most of them, right? So how do you find that people are actually paying for the care for their parents, who could maybe be living in a community like this for 10 years, maybe? Is there like any tips you can give to people who are like wondering how am I going to pay for mom and dad's care?
There's quite a few questions that we ask. One, are they veterans? Or is your mom a wife, or is she a wife of a veteran? Those things. And then we go down that list. Do they have a pension? Do they have stocks? Do they have bonds? Do they have long-term care? Are they only relying on their Social Security and that's it? And it depends on the age range, but typically the silent generation, up through like the 40s, that's all they're living on in some cases, is their Social Security. And so once you become, I think it's over 70, I'm not exact on this age, but it's harder and harder to get long-term care. I think it's actually 60.
Yeah.
My mom was able to get whole-term life, and I was surprised. I was really surprised. But that's all she could get at 84. And she did it only for her funeral services. That's all she was able to get.
Right, final expense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really talking to the kids more about themselves. I'm like, of course we have to think about your parents, but you're going to have to pull together. Sometimes the kids have to pull together. And if there's family dynamics where they don't want to support each other, we just go through and, sometimes they want like the most beautiful private room. And I'm like, we need to look at shared rooms. It's not just going to be a private room. In the Bay Area, it can go from 3,000 and up. And 3,000 could be a shared room. And that's a month. And that's not including care. So when I'm talking to the families, I'm also talking about the kids, the adult children, thinking for themselves to get long-term fund now, because the cost is only going to go up. And before you know it, the year's gone by. And then all of a sudden you're like, I was going to do that last year and I never did it. And now I'm getting older. And there might be a pre-existing condition by that time, and it's harder for you to even get long-term fund care, right? So those kind of things. But yeah, and sometimes what we do is, if we can't place them here, we may have to place them out in Manteca or out in Lodi or further out where it's really hot and not as accommodating like we have in the beautiful Bay Area, where we have, the most beautiful weather, but it's also the most expensive living here as well.
Right. So, well, it sounds like you have quite a bit of information to share with families about, like how they can tailor the solution for their parents to the resources that are available. So that's a conversation that you have all the time with people. That's part of the process of working with you.
Yep. It's a free process. Yep. And it's free the whole entire time that I'm working with them.
Right. There's no cost to them.
No cost. Yep.
Not cost to them. All right. Very good. Well, Nickell, I have really learned a ton from talking to you right now, and I'm sure that the folks who are listening or watching this will have learned a great deal as well. So if they want to get a hold of you to ask some questions and see how you can help, what's the best way for them to reach you?
I would say email is the best way. I wish I had my little QR code here, but it's nmello at youroasisadvisor.com.
And Melo at youroasisadvisor.com. And I will have that in the show notes so people will be able to reach out to you. All right, Nickell, hey, thank you so much. This was really fantastic. I really appreciate you making the time to share what you know with our audience.
Thank you so much, Seb. It was really
All right.
wonderful. I look
Okay, we'll
forward to
catch you on the flip
talking
side.
again. All
Okay,
right. Thank you.
thanks. Okay,
All right.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Subscribe now.